But I wanted to start with the reaction to the killing of Osama Bin Laden, because it was quite muted in the Middle East, and I'm wondering what accounts for this. Who wants to take that on? Jim, you want to take that on?
Osama's reputation, and Al-Qaeda's as well, has been on decline for some time in the Middle East. And I think once you understand that, you can understand the muted response. And the second thing is that the Arab Spring, really, there is political Islam involved to a certain extent, but it's a minor motif. The major motif of what's going on in the Middle East today is a younger generation fed up with a lack of opportunities, with a lack of respect, and they are looking to a more secular set of motivating forces. How are we going to get work? How are we going to have families? How are we going to live a decent life? How are we going to have people treat us like human beings rather than animals? That has nothing to do with Al-Qaeda. The other thing is that Al-Qaeda has now been at work for more than a decade. And it is clear that they have a very potent nihilistic message. But that's it. They have no positive message. They have no program for what to do to solve some of these problems of the Muslim world. At some point, that had to finally start registering with people that this is a road to nowhere. So I think it's not a surprise once you understand the background and the context why there's a muted response. Even with that muted response, as I think the panelists here would agree, there is still an undertone of anger that this has to happen at the hands of the West.
Hoda, you wanted to add something to that?
Yes, I agree with everything that you said. I also want to say that there's a lot of stuff going on right now in the Arab world. So people are very involved with their own problems, with their, with what is developments that are going on in their own countries. So the Bin Laden news was to many people irrelevant because they just, on that specific day, there was something happening in their own country. So it was, they saw the news, maybe, they reacted a little, and then let's move on and, focus on what we have to do.
Mohammad, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I want to say Al-Qaeda have been killed even before Bin Laden killed when the revolution succeeded in Tunisia, because the revolution have shown that people demands and what they want really is not what Al-Qaeda are fighting for. Al-Qaeda has for years claimed that they are carrying out people demands in the area, which we believe to be lies and unreal. When the people start protesting in Middle East, chanting for their freedom and for dignity and for human rights, they're running for only rights as American and European people enjoying in their countries.
I should have said the reason I'm up here is because I was lucky enough to be in Egypt for the revolution the night Mubarak fell, and also then in Libya several weeks later. And to me, part of why it surprised us is because we have lived so long with these assumptions about what is really going on over there. And our assumption was, well, we help an autocrat stay in power because the only other choice is Islamic extremism. And what the people in these countries basically said, they kicked that all to the curb a long time ago. They said that's a false choice. That may be what the West thinks, but we're moving on. We're long past that.
There's an interesting dynamic going on in line with what you're saying. Particularly in Syria, Mohammad could talk about this a little bit, I think, where the Assad regime is trying to depict the protesters as Islamic extremists. And so you get this response then where the protesters are carrying banners that say no to the Muslim Brotherhood and no to the Muslim Brotherhood and no to extremism. And then it goes out on YouTube. So you have this kind of interesting dynamic where it's the autocrats who are now the ones who are saying that the protesters are extremists.
Do we think that, judging from what Harry said, there seems to be a feeling that the revolutions in the Middle East change perceptions about the Arab world in the West, and perhaps even in the Middle East itself? Do you have a response to that? Anybody?
Well, I think the most, excuse me, I think the most dramatic change is within Middle East itself. I mean, we heard it on the street, and we, Human Rights Watch, where I do some work, we had several people in Libya recently, and to get to Libya, they had to take taxi cabs from Egypt. And when they got to the border, they stopped to pay the taxi cab drivers, and the taxi cab drivers said, "We don't want your money. Thank you for what you're doing." Their sense of almost euphoric at this point of release from a long nightmare, if you will, and their hopes and promises, not all of which are going to be fulfilled, is just apparently patent when you're over there right now.
Well, I think it's a return to politics. I mean, we haven't had full-blown Arab politics for almost 50 years. So I think what you said is correct. It isn't just us who are learning about the Middle East, but the Middle Easterners are representing themselves to themselves. It's quite a dramatic development.
I think that at the level of the people too, here in the U.S., me being an Egyptian, now when someone asks me, "So where are you from?" and I say Egypt, and I remember, the look of people used to be amazed that I'm from Egypt because Egypt has the pyramids, and now, when I say Egypt, I still see that admiration, but it's because of the revolution and not because of the pyramids anymore. And I think that that's, it's a great thing. It's a great feeling. So I feel like at the level of the people too. There was also a Gallup poll while the revolution in Egypt, I think, was going on right after, and it showed that the percentage of Americans who were supportive of it, the person who was talking about it said Americans had never agreed on anything that by that high of a percentage before. So there was a lot of support for the revolution.
If I may add one line. In general, the perception about Middle East, of course, have changed. And President Obama said, quote unquote, protesters in Egypt have inspired the world about their peaceful movement. But yet still, U.S. foreign policy toward another countries where revolution happening now, it's questionable, because is U.S. still believing if the Assad's regime left Syria or fall, the Muslim Brotherhood or Islamists will take over the power? It's another question. And if they are not believing, and if they really change their view about Middle East, why they're acting in this way? They're still acting in weird way toward such dictators.